Welcome to the 10th episode of the European Republic. And today I have a very active pro-European activist with me, Nathan. Nathan has already done fundraising for Volt France, was active in Jeff, Belgium, and is now currently heading Paneuropa in Belgium. Welcome, Nathan. Nice to have you.
Thank you very much for this invitation to this podcast.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you are someone who has worked already with the major organizations in the space. And let's start with a very general question. Why does Europe matter to you? And why did you become an activist for Europe?
For me, I think there are two parts. Firstly, is of course as individual. I come from a Dutch, French, Swiss family, and I grew up in France in Alsace. So I really grew up in the idea of being a European, being multicultural, but also with the image of what nationalistic ideas can destroy. I mean, Alsace was destroyed in the Second and First World War, so really I grew up in this ideas. That is firstly, and secondly, when I had developed a bit my political ideas when I grew up and I saw more and more over the history over what's happening in the world, just it was very rational thinking. It is that Europe is the only future that is possible if we want to stay strong, if we want to have the capacity to pay to live. We have to be Europeans. We don't have a choice. So that are like the two main things.
So a personal experience and the geopolitical necessity. So you'd say if you want to survive, it's mostly geopolitical or also economical. And oh yeah.
For me, it's on every part. I mean, it is interconnected. The whole world is interconnected. If the economics fails, the geopolitical will fail. And if the geopolitical will fail, we will lose our unity and our strengths. If we lose our strengths, we can lose things as our culture, as our independence. I mean, the Baltic countries, if there isn't Europe, Russia will take them and they will become puppet states as Belarus. And I mean, today, Belarus has a Russian culture. It isn't they have lost their own culture. So it is really interconnected. So if we lose on one point, we risk lose it all.
Yeah. I mean, especially in the Baltics and the East, the threat of getting attacked and vassalized and assimilated by the Russians is something that lives in the minds, I think, on the entire eastern flank of the EU, also in Poland, Baltics, and the Ukrainians are fighting it right now. But there are now many ways how one can become activist or engage for a united Europe. Also many different visions of a united Europe. And I mean, as I said in the beginning, you have tried out or were involved in several. You started, I think, with being active for Volt. Then you were part of the Young European Federalists, which are more center-left leaning in the tradition of Spinelli. And now you are building Paneuropa Belgium as a coordinator, which are more in this more center-right conservative Kalergi tradition. So why did you move to Paneuropa, and what basically branch or flavor of European unification do you envision?
Yeah, that's not an easy question. It isn't less that I moved to. I see myself as a realist, and every way to achieve Europe is a good way. I mean, the most important thing is to know the priorities. And for me, if a movement is pro-European, pro-democracy, and accept to work with other movements where they can have disagreement with other ideas to build Europe, it is the most important. So, I mean, I started indeed in Volt. That's because I have family in the Netherlands. So I heard when I was 17 that this movement existed. So I joined and I stayed a bit there. I did some things. And then after that, when I moved to Belgium, to Brussels, for my studies, I joined Jeff, but pretty much on the same time I joined Paneuropa. Why? Because the two parts have strengths that other don't have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it like I did go to one and not the other because ideology it's different. No, it is really because I think I can give energy to as much movement that are possible. And what I saw really quickly is that Jeff, they have the strength of the numbers. They are young, they have energy, they can achieve more like militant work. Pan Europe, they are an old movement. So where they're very strong is they have a lot of contacts, a lot of experience, and a lot of high-level people. What Jeff sometimes lacked. So that was the first. That's very interesting. And like I said, I am a realist. So the fact that Jeff is more left-leaning and that Paneuropa is more right-leaning, it is for me not too important because the ideas from Spinelli and the ideas from Kalergi are not opposed.
No.
They are giving the same basis. And to finish very quickly, because I'm talking, of course, on the ideas, the idea for me, what Europe needs to be, it is to be something new. It don't have to be a United States of Europe that is the same as the United States of America. It don't have to be a federation like, I don't know, in one time the Chinese Federation Republic. So it don't have to be something that was already existing. We have to invent something new because it's the first time that with so many cultures and so different history, we're trying to build something. So for me, Europe has to be an. I would take the word from the old international president from Paneuropa, so Alain Ternoir. And he said to me that Europe has to be an addition of patriotisms, regional patriotism, national patriotism that are building together to a European patriotism. So not destroying what already exists, but building together. And that is, I think, the most important. And then in a second part, so that's the first part is to get the citizens. And then the second part, you can begin to think about, do we have a parliament, a senate? Do we have a government? Which are the competences giving to the European level, which not, and so on and so on. But that will be declined from the citizens themselves.
Yeah. I mean, as long as we don't have like the cultural hegemony and the will of the people. But we have already like moved quite far towards like unification, I would say. We look where when like 100 years ago, Kalergi started in 1922, 23, I think, with Paneuropa. We came a longer way, right? Europe is already like a confederation of nations. What it still lacks is like military. The parliament is still, it exists, but doesn't have such a big say compared to the commission and the council, especially towards the council. Um, so maybe, what do you think are like the next steps that have to be taken now, and what do you hope also to maybe push for, achieve by being active in Paneuropa? Because I think one can say, well, I want to unite Europe. Okay, I agree with that. We all want to do that. But how do we do that?
That, I think, there can be like two main things.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, and the most important, I go back to this patriotism things, is the people. Because when Europe was created, it was created by the elites. That was something that Kalergi said in his book. Europe has to be created by its citizens, not by its elites. And that's why also Kalergi wasn't a lot involved in the creation of the EU. So that's the first part. We need to have the people on board, and until today, we have a lot of difficulties to do that. We have, of course, the most pro-Europeans are highly educated people or people that are so what it was before the arrival of the European Union. I think that are like the two main groups that are pro-European today. But that isn't the majority. And I think we can see with, for example, the example of Magyar, that to have the people begin to feel European, you have to have a European Union, European politics, activists that are interested in their day-to-day needs.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons I think they didn't see that until now is for a lot of time, the politicians in every country, this was like the global tactic. When there was something good that European Union gave, they were like, oh, thank you very much. I did it myself. I
Yeah.
was like the big creator of this idea. And they skipped the European Union. But when there was something difficult, so for example, when they had to spare money because of a crisis, I don't know, and so on and so on,
Migration, for example.
migration and so on and so on, they were saying, oh yeah, it's the fault of the European Union. So yeah, of course, the people that heard that, all this way of talking, they were thinking on a moment, yeah, European Union is all bad and nothing good. And you have to be be educated about how the European Union works to see that's not entirely true. For example, and that's like the second part, the European Union can be seen pretty much as a confederation. But one thing that is still very, very strong, and what a lot of people don't see, is who decides really in the European Union. If we put aside the European Bank, because that is the only one where it is like really federalist, it
Mm-hmm.
is the member states that decide.
Yeah.
Or all of them, or a majority. But the Commission is listening to what the European states are saying. So when you are all these populists and all the nationalists saying, yeah, it's Brussels. Yeah, it is not Brussels. Brussels obey to the Council of Europe and to all the leaders, the state leaders. So I think that's something that has to be clarified. And maybe if something very concrete needs to be, in every classroom in all the European Union, we have to learn how the European Union works, what are the benefits, and how it was created. I think that is something like really unified. One program in all the schools. I think that's the first part, because if we don't have the citizens, we will be beaten by the nationalistic.
Yeah, I agree very
Mm.
much. I mean, as you said, basically a big problem of the EU is that basically the EU often usually just adheres to the consensus of the European Council of the heads of states, and the consensus between 27 nations is often something that no nation is really happy with, because I mean it's often a compromise between like 24 positions, and then every time the populists can say, well, the EU is screwing us over, while, or in the case even like right now in Germany, Friedrich Merz is blaming the EU for some stuff, while his party it's his party, and von der Leyen from his own party who is executing these things.
Mm.
Um, so what do you say, like the most important thing you say is education? I agree with that, but also like communication
Mm.
in general. I mean, education, it's a little bit also a problem that's like not federalized. Even like in Germany, the different German states do it differently. And in my own experience, it was like at the end of the year how the EU worked, and I think even my teacher wasn't so sure how it does, so we didn't really get into it, and talked a little bit more about World War II. Um, the Germans can't stop talking about that.
Yeah, that,
Um,
yeah.
so, but now outside of school, does the EU have to improve its own communication, or do we like need to build more activism, more media? What's the biggest lever, you think? And what can, for example, also Paneuropa Union do?
I think it is like there are two ways.
Hmm.
You can't have the one without the other. You have to create a European public space. That's a lot of people are saying that. So European medias, European television, and so on and so on. And that you aren't just seeing the politicians from your own country, not only the news from your own country. So that's the first
Hmm.
part, and it's very important. Um, and the second part is, of course, the communication from the European Union itself. As an anecdote, I had a friend saying to me, Yeah, I saw one of the communications from the European Union. The only thing it gave me, it was like, I hate the European Union much more now. So I say I understand it. But on the more activist part, because the European Union has to have a codified communication. That's of course at all government, all bodies. But they have, I think, to do it more localized and a
Mhm.
bit like less flat, because their communication is really like publicity from I don't know, for a mark for Coca-Cola. It's the same. It's very flat. You don't have energy. You don't have an emotion when you look at it. But for the more activist part and for the politicians, something I believe in is that we need to become populists, but
Mhm.
not ideologically. Ideologically, that is something else. But in the communication, where you can very easily taking ideas, maybe not explaining them, but taking ideas and showing them and being sometimes aggressive about it, I think it's needed to fight back. I mean, if you look at the people that have beaten the nationalistic forces in Europe or in America, they are populists. In the communication terms, they are populists. They have populistic tactics. And that is what's working today, because you can't be explaining 3 hours long why the economic work like that way, that way, that way. That doesn't work anymore. People aren't listening. So you have to take that, and of course, what I say in the beginning, adding that with subject that are truly matters to the people, like how they live, how they can pay the groceries at the end of the month, and so on and so on.
Mhm. I'm not so sure if I agree completely, because I had the very same idea for a very long time, and I tried to do that, acting a bit more populistic or from communication for Europe, with one of my past projects with Ave Europa. But the organization at the end really like it not only became populist like in communication style, but at the end also from content ideology, because often even if you just content wise you aren't as populist just from your style and from your methods, the like the medium shapes the message at the end. Like you draw in more populist sentiments and ways of thinking and emotional responses. And I think it's a bit of a slippery slope. But I agree on the other hand that it's very hard to like get through the noise nowadays with like very flat or very nuanced messages. So maybe do you have some example? How do you think that worked for this method, or how you yourself maybe have tried it with some success?
Now, that's something I think as a tactic as populism
Hmm.
is simple messaging, something like that, firstly. Secondly, don't hesitate to attack. I mean, sometimes traditional politicians, are afraid to say things because
Hmm.
they fear of a backlash or something like that. Sometimes I just think you have to say it. And I mean, when you are saying or you have a populistic way, it don't necessarily means that you will become populistic. For example, for me, a tactic like the one of Mamdani in New York was very populistic. But on the same time, his politics aren't far right or far left. I mean, if we take European standard, Mamdani is like a traditional socialist. It's just for
Yeah.
America, he's a far right, far left communist, but that's another.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
for American
Yeah.
standards, he is more left leaning than I think. I mean, the Democrats had New York had like mayor before was like Bloomberg was one of the mayors,
Mm.
I think, and I forgot what was the one before Mamdani. But usually the New York Democrats are what would be a conservative here in Central
Yeah.
Europe, right?
Mhm.
So
But
in relation to his like for American standards, he is very much to the left.
of course,
Um,
but I can also take like a more European idea. Here in Belgium, we have the N-VA. So that's a conservative movement, of course. But conservative movement that has now the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense, and that is not categorized as a far-right movement. And they used populistic methods. For example, I think 3 months before the elections of Bart de Wever, he disguised himself as Santa Claus, so Saint Nicholas, and he did go in the church and say to the children, "Are you good Flemish children? Because if you come from Wallonia, it is not God." So that's more like a Flemish nationalistic way of doing, of course, and Belgium is very special about that. But I mean, we have in the end to be maybe not fully populistic. That I am agreeing with you. You don't have to be fully populistic. What you are saying has to be based on facts, has to be based on things that you can explain outside of like your more populistic messaging. Like you need to have like 2 layers. The first layer that is populistic, that is to be seen by everyone. Second layer that is more traditional. So that's I am totally agreeing on you, because what you say today, I don't know if you heard about Glucksmann in France.
A little bit, but I'm not very well versed in French politics because I was one of the kids that took Latin in school instead of learning French. So unfortunately, I don't understand much. So there's like a language barrier.
Yeah, that's no problem. But Glucksmann is like now one of the candidates for the Social Democrats, and he's a strong pro-European. He is since the beginning fighting for Ukraine, against China, for European sovereignty, for European defense, and so on and so on. He is now like at 10% in the polls, but I don't think he will make more. I think he will do less. Why? Because maybe he has these ideas, these strong ideas, but he hasn't any charisma. He has difficulties to have a populistic messaging. And on the other side, you have a Bardella from the Rassemblement National, and it's a very good communicant. He doesn't have any ideas, but he communicates very good. And the other side, you have Mélenchon, and that's like a far left brute. And they are making far more than him. So we have a possibility in France now that we are in France for the presidential elections. We have like 2 rounds. First one with other candidates, and second one with the 2 that had the more votes. And we have now, maybe we will have on the second round, an Bardella far right against Mélenchon far left, because all the other candidates don't know which place to take, don't know how to communicate, and can't have any vote from the French people.
When will the election be again?
It will be in 1 year.
In 1 year. Yeah. I mean,
a lot can change. A lot can change. But right now, I talk with my French friends, all the people that have also studies politics, study analytics, and so on. They are all saying, right now, if all one candidate change completely their way of doing, or if one of the 2 big ones are doing a big mistake, or new one will come, like a Macron that was like, he was unknown, and 4 months, 6 months before the elections, he came out. So it can maybe happen again, but if that is not the case, it's like 80% chance that we have far right as the next president.
Yeah. I mean, like, right now, that's one thing I also like here in German media, that Bardella is very likely. I mean, he has also very good communication work. I mean, he's also the MEP with the highest numbers of like Instagram followers, something like 1.2 million, which for me is also crazy because like even like the German chancellor has like, I think 300, 400,000. Or maybe not that much, but French politicians are way more popular than German politicians within Germany. So you have already, I think, way more developed communication space, or like more heated up media.
They know how to use media.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Do you think, depending, I mean, do you think that if Badea wins, that the France will shift away from the EU? Do you have any opinions of that?
Now, firstly, you can say Bardella will win. It will be the Rassemblement National. Why? Because Bardella is a communicant. He isn't someone with ideas. The head behind is Marine Le Pen. Even if now they are like, he's trying to take a more prominent position in the movement. But if he will win, I believe he will stay in the European Union. But he will maybe have a tactic more like Meloni. But I think in the end harsher than Meloni. So doing the role of the European Union, of course, but lowering the money given by France to the European Union, fighting against new projects, so like European Army, like a European Foreign Ministry, all these reforms, or even reforms giving more power to the European Parliament, all that will be blocked. And scaling back and blocking everything that will go against like what they see as the interest of France. So, and in the end, I think also they will scale back the help to Ukraine. They will block help for Ukraine. They will block everything that goes against Netanyahu. They will work with the Chinese, with Donald Trump. It will be like between Meloni and Orban. I think something like that. So enemies from Europe, but that are understanding that Brexit or Frexit in this case isn't a good idea.
It will be still quite devastating for Europe.
Oh, it will be cataclysmic. I mean, if now we have Bardella and France is one of the two big countries that has built Europe from the basis, will be gone, and that for 5 years minimum, and that will bring also chaos, a lot of chaos, because we calculated here in France that they will need 6 months, now 10 months, to destroy the French constitutional order. They need 10 months without having a supermajority to destroy the constitutional order. So yeah, it will be like that. And we see now that the European Union is preparing for this case. They are trying to have the budgets so quick. They try to finish it before the French elections. They are trying to change the important positions in the European Union before the French elections, and so on and so on.
That's quite worrying. And I guess Mélenchon, the other side, isn't much more EU friendly.
The only thing that I can say about Mélenchon is that he has a true program. I am not agreeing with everything that's in it, but he has a program. RN is only populistic. It's like nothing realistic. But he has ties with Russia. He's thinking as the European Union as a technocratic liberal order that is against the workers. I think in the end he will be less damaging than Bardella for the European Union for some parts. But in the end, it will be pretty much the same. It is like, if now there's a second round between these two, I will not vote. Because none are like realistic, and none are pro-European, and none are pro-democracy.
I mean, as you also were involved in French politics with Volt, do you have some insights why this is the case? Why is basically right now, I mean, a lot of things can change till the next year, but basically France seems to have the choice between two anti-EU, pro-Russian leaning political leaders. Quite devastating for such a Central European and very, great European power, one of the E3.
Yeah, this is right now, the position in the polls is far right, 30%, 35%. And then behind Mélenchon at 16, 17, and the center-right candidates, for one of the center-right candidates, because there are multiple, he's also at 16. And the problem, I think, mainly is that Macron destroyed classical politics.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the only options that I see in France to fight against these two far right and far left forces is what Macron did in 2017. It is present a front that is with people from left, with people from right, with people from the center, with liberal, with progressive, just to build something new, to build really on the long term. That's what he said. What he said, and very pro-European and so on. But he did nothing of that, and he had a very authoritarian-like politic,
Mm-hmm.
and that built a lot of frustration against all the traditional movements. And he opened the door to the far right with his elections in 2024, sorry. When we had like the European elections, he lost. Far right got the most votes, and he decided the same evening to dissolve the parliament and call new elections, because I think, and some of my friends too, that he wanted to have the far right in power while he was
Mm-hmm.
still president to like destroy them. But it didn't go as planned, and now the parliament is very fractured, and nothing gets done, and everybody is shouting on everybody, and we can't have one kind of like. The problem right now from Ranier, from the elections, we don't have a lot of candidates. We have too much candidates. We have like, I don't know, 30 persons that are saying they are ready to become president. 40. It's gigantic. I mean, in the left, there are like 10, 10, 11. Center, they're like 4, 5. And then you have other people that are saying, I will think about it, but they want to do it. It is very chaotic, and I think French people, they look for stability, but they saw that they voted for a like classical politician, a classical centrist, if you may say, to give stability. Only thing that they did was right-leaning politics and very authoritarian. So it created really big hatred from Macron in France. And right now, a lot of them are thinking, yeah, only things that we didn't try is the far right or the far left, and people that want to fight against the far right, they are ready only to vote for far left, because they feel they're the only one that are really resisting. So it is very complicated right now, but yeah. But on Europe, what I can say is we have a truly French position, because very long France was, I think, the least integrated country. A lot of French people aren't feeling European, even can feel anti-Europe, and I think that is from the De Gaulle perspective. We have threats. It's like the idea that they are small nations, and nations that don't know yet they are small. And France is really a nation that don't know yet they are small. I talk with friends that have voted far right, and they are saying to me, yeah, but we thought Europe, France will be better. Of course, we are a great nation, and we are sending more money to Europe than we are receiving, and we haven't any benefits from it, only not good things, and so on and so on and so on. So they are thinking, a lot of them, that Europe doesn't matter for France. Maybe for other countries, but not for France.
Basically the same like post empire hangover syndrome you saw in like Britain, where the like mentally the people still think it's like a global, or they have still a posture and the mindset of we are a global empire. We once ruled half of the world. We are the grande nation. Why do we need Europe? And well, I think Britain is right now discovering that it's like, I don't know. It's becoming basically just a trading floor between India and the United States and the EU, between different power blocks, and they use it maybe to like for the British Islands as tax haven, and it doesn't have the same like military weight or importance as it had in the past, or
No.
industrial importance.
Yeah, far
Same
from
with
that.
yeah, and I mean similar. I mean Brexit. We all know how Brexit ended. Um, so
Mm.
would you say? I mean, that's like France is maybe a little bit too stuck in the past.
Yeah, but that's also in the education. I mean, I did all my education in French, like until I
Hmm.
was 18. And we learn in school the history of a strong French nation. Like, I mean, when we talk about Napoleon, we learn about the conquest of Napoleon and the fact that he brought the Code Civil and what we learned from the Republic and from the French revolutions to the rest of Europe.
Yeah,
We learn also that the French Revolution, it was like the breaking point in a lot of European history. How we
which is
learned
true.
it,
Which
it,
is
it
all
is
true.
in part is so true, but we forget to say that French revolutions, the ideas that brought to it, was also fueled already from the American Revolution, that was itself fueled by the Corsican Revolution and the Haitian Revolution. So we forget we are very French centered.
Mm.
And even with the construction of Europe, when we learned it, it is very French centered. When we are learning about the Cold War, we are saying, oh yeah, so French did that, French did this, and so on and so on. And oh yeah, and next to it was the construction of Europe, but that's okay. That's not the most important thing. It's there. It's okay. So I think that's like one of the main thing, and it is also linked to the fact that France for a very long time, what I said in the beginning about politicians blaming Europe. I think if we take all the politicians in all Europe, the French politicians were the masters in this part. They were very good. Why? Because at every time they could blame Europe, they could say, like de Gaulle has said, ta 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 ta. But they forget something very important. And now I'm coming with the pan-European part. De Gaulle was not fundamentally anti-European.
Yeah,
He was a realist, and he was mainly a realist. He built a government with communists and right people because he knew it was the best thing to do at that time. And like that, on Europe, he was a realist. He saw that America could make from Europe something like a vassal state, and that's why he also wanted to fight back. He saw Europe as a thing that will subjugate all the European nations to the US. And what Alain Ternoir, so also the old president, he was like, his father was a minister under de Gaulle. So he worked with him, he knew him. And he said to me and to his friends that de Gaulle on Europe wanted an independent Europe, a sovereign Europe. And
mm.
that's why he asked Pompidou, so the future French president, to create, with the help of the father from Alain Ternoir, the Pan-European Union in France. De
Hmm.
Gaulle was an actor in the creation of the Pan-European Union in France.
Yeah. I mean, he was also one of, I think, founding fathers of the European project, even if he had always a more confederalist
Mm.
vision of the, I think, United Europe. He was very elemental and central to it even getting started, both with the Paneuropa Union, but
Mm.
also with the European project in general. Um, but that's like a part of a heritage of de Gaulle that I think is a bit more forgotten or more obscure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's completely forgotten. But the problem of there was an historian that was talking at the radio, in the French radio, and especially from the Gaulle, that said today, yeah, the problem is everybody tried to say what de Gaulle would have done today, but that doesn't work. De Gaulle did what he did in his time because his time was very special. It was in the
Yeah.
Second World War, after the Second World War. You can't set them today. It's impossible. and just everybody is trying to take this quote from de Gaulle without saying, without taking the rest.
Yeah.
So de Gaulle is today just like, I don't know, it is a bit like quoting the Bible in the US now. It is used by everybody. So
Yeah.
from the far left to the far right, everybody used de Gaulle in their own way.
Like a mythical figure.
Yeah, it is really a mythical figure. It's like you have in France, you have Vercingetorix, so the from the antiquity. You have Napoleon, you have de Gaulle, and that is like three of the biggest mythical figures of France.
Yeah.
Mm.
Basically founding fathers or
Yeah.
guiding the totem. It's fascinating. But you are also like, because you have also a Dutch background and you're living now in Belgium. I mean, the Benelux states, Belgium, Luxembourg, Netherlands, they were very fundamental to the European project from the beginning and very pro-European. Do you also see that the difference between like Belgium and France, that Belgium is way more pro-European in its culture and discourse? Or also when you work in your political projects?
Yeah, in Belgium, what I think very important is that they are already a federation. They see how it is to work for the people, and they know they are small. Belgium, no, they aren't a big power anymore. They had, without the European Union, they are nothing. They knew it. They know it, and they know it very well. So for them, they see they are benefiting. Of course, they are anti-European forces in Belgium. Vlaams Belang in Vlaanderen, but also like the PTB, that's like far left. But the attacks are less on the fact on the European project than on what Europe is today. Those from the far left is saying they are liberal, they are a way of the capitalistic powers to use it, and from the Vlaams Belang, they are more saying on the nationalistic way. They are like blocking the fact that Vlaanderen will become independent. They are also liberal because everything that's liberal is very bad today, apparently. So they are democratic, it's very bad to be democratic, and so on and so on. Also, what I saw, and that's more like between the Netherlands and France, and that's very very funny because my father is a theologian and a philosopher. So that is something I saw with him, is which religion builded the country, how it has an influence today. The Netherlands is a Calvinistic country, very Protestant. France was a very Catholic country. And today, to the relations to a hierarchy, it is very interesting. In France, you have far more this idea of we need a leader. We need what you call in France the homme providentiel. So like the sort of Messiah guy that will come to save us all. And the idea from we need an authority, we need an order, than in Netherlands. In the Netherlands, it is far more like, Calvinistic. What's more important is the individual person. It's like far more liberal in a sense. Yeah. And in the ways of doing politics, you see that. For example, in the Netherlands, you can have the prime minister, so at that time it was Rutte, making joke with the leader from the far right. There's a very funny video clip where Rutte is they're making jokes about he's making jokes about the haircut from Wilders. So Wilders is the leader from the far right, and Wilders responded about the fact that Rutte doesn't have a wife. You can't have that in France.
I saw that clip.
Yeah, it's a very funny clip, and that's very classical. And in Belgium also, the Belgians know how to laugh about themselves. In France, no, it's not possible. Or if it happens, it will be like big titles in the media and later a big fight and so on and so on.
Yeah, I mean that's something we see, I think, all over Europe. I mean the influence of the different Christian dominations, even today, where most people are like secularized or atheists, especially like Calvinist countries like Switzerland and Netherlands are still way more liberal than like Catholic Bavaria or Catholic France or Catholic Poland. It's very fascinating, but also still also one sign that we are still like all in one Europe, um, despite this all differences that once divided the continent don't matter that much any longer, but still do somehow. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is very interesting, but that's why also I love like the pan-European perspective about it.
Hmm.
To assume that Christianity is something that binds our European together. Sometimes in Jeff, they have a lot of difficulties to acknowledge it. It depends from which people, because there's a lot of people. In Jeff, you can have people from left, from liberals, from central, and so on and so on. But in the ideas for the Pan-European Union, that's like basic. And I think that's very true. We don't have to forget that all of our European cultures are impregnated with the Christians' ideas. If they are Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, that are very different, of course, but they are all Christians. And you don't have to say that we all have to become Catholics to acknowledge the fact that we are all from Christian culture. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that is needed to become more relevant today. We see that, and we are stopping to say from religion is something from the private matter. I'm very French, so I think in other European countries it's different, and they acknowledge that. But in France, it's really much religion is private matter that has nothing to do with anything, if not for the individual.
Hmm. I mean, I think that's the secularism. I mean, French has its laicism, that is a bit more stronger on that, but it's still very, I think, mainstream across most of Europe nowadays, especially Western Europe. Um, but and I think this awareness, cultural awareness that Europe, a lot of our culture and institutions are massively shaped by Christianity. I mean, the Catholic Church already in the medieval ages was basically a proto-EU, coordinating a lot of the politics across the continent. And also the values like human rights, equality, individualism have very deep roots, like philosophically and theologically, in the Christian tradition. Like if you look at the European idea of human rights, which originated here and basically spread from here across the world, if you look at the people who advocated in it, they cite like Aquinas and all the big Christian theologians and philosophers. But do we need actually like revive Christianity for that, or do we just have to like acknowledge that heritage? Because there's also like this trend, like cultural Christianity, especially in the United States, where a lot of people like see this cultural value, but don't necessarily see the necessity to do believe it.
I think we don't have to like revive Christianity.
Hmm.
Revive it. It's something that is used by traditional movement from Christianity or from neo movements. And these movements are basically anti-European, because most of them, if you are traditional, you are in hand to hand with nationalistic forces.
Yeah.
But acknowledging cultural Europe, that is cultural Christianity. That's, I think, very interesting. I mean, for example, my sister has had the same education as myself, like in Christianity. Like my mother is a pastor, so we had an education and we did go to the church. I became a believer, so I am
Hmm.
still like considering myself as a Protestant. My sister is saying that she is culturally Christian, but she don't believe in God. And
Hmm.
just acknowledging that gives a lot more freedom to talk about how that you then, because today you can have a lot of friction just saying fun, I believe that are like elements that come from Christianity. Because people can then say, yeah, you want that everybody in Europe is Christian. But that's not it. You can be, for example, from other religion, but having Christian values or Christians basic in your cultural way of doing. That's, I think, very important. For example, you talked about individualism. Individualism is something that really came out in part from the Protestantism.
Yeah.
Protestants did a lot of work to this move toward individualism. So I think acknowledging that is today very important to talk about our history, our position, what we did, how the bad thing we did, the good thing we can, and so on, and create a basis, because all the citizens need a basis to identify to.
Yeah. I agree here very much. I mean, I myself, I'm not a believer, but I see the tremendous value. A lot of a lot of the ideas have that Christianity introduced and propagated over the last 2 millennia, and I think we have to maintain them. And for that, we have to acknowledge this heritage. I mean, but you don't, but you don't see uh, I'm wondering how much Europe actually is still Christian, because I mean Christianity was very relevant for Europe for a long time, but we are also a mix, not only of it, but also especially Enlightenment traditions for the last 200, 300 years. Um, so there were two currents within European thought, one towards Christianity, but one also away from it. That's very critical with this very Enlightenment tradition, which are, I think, hard to reconcile.
I think, in a way, Protestantism, some part of Protestantism, did this job, acknowledging the fact that not everything comes from God. That we have to be rational about a way to being Christian. To, for example, read the Bible. That everybody reads the Bible and know for itself. The fact that the pastors aren't in a special relationship to God, but are scholars among the populations. That basically was also one of the big differences. So I think we did a part of that, and that's why it's very important. I think to reconcile these two ideas is to have in the middle, to acknowledge this cultural part. Enlightenment is also influenced by Christian ideas. And if someone that's enlightened don't accuse you directly that you are a bad person because you are Christian, but say, okay, I understand why you believe in God. I don't believe in God. But what's important is you have that's like laicity. You have the right to believe in God. You have the right to follow your rights, your way of life. But you don't have to impose your ideas on the rest of society.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way you can have a discussion between the two movements. And what I find very interesting, and does not know a lot, but in France, the first religious society, the first religion movement that acknowledged, that supported the separation from state and church, were the Protestants. There in the parliament, you had a pastor, I don't remember his name, but that really defended the separation from state and church. So, and I feel today that from the Vatican, from the Catholic Pope, from most of the Catholic movements, are in this idea since Vatican II, they are the idea reconcile, enlightenment, and belief. And what the problem is today is, as always, we only hear the people that are screaming the most. And who is screaming the most is the little minority from traditionalists that hate enlightenment and that are screaming a lot. And we think, oh, there's a regain from traditionalistic and anti-enlightenment and so on and so on. But that's not true. it's the same as nationalistic forces. They are saying we are the silent majority. But if we look to all the polls, if we look to the people and so on, the majority of Europeans are pro-European.
Yeah.
They just don't have a movement, or they just have like other priorities under Europe and so on, but they are pro-European. So the silent majority is pro-European, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, that's something we see in the survey. And I also agree, if you think about it, that this Enlightenment and Christian tradition are like intertwined. Or like Enlightenment also came out of Christianity because of a lot of the concepts of like objectivity and rationalism, and like that nature is even like accessible to reason, emerged out of Christian tradition. But that brings us maybe to one little bit more thorny question that also is in the center of the populist discourse a lot: the relationship between like Europe and Islam, and especially Muslim immigration. How do you think should we approach that issue? Because we are, especially from a lot of populists, say like Europe has this Christian heritage, and how do we integrate the waves of especially Muslim migration we have seen in the last 10 decades?
I think just now you used a good word, integrate.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we do right now in a lot of places in Europe is we put everyone together. We say, okay, if you are immigrants and you're poor, you are going there. But yeah, so they are only with people that are also immigrant and poor and also Muslim. So they entertain each other,
Yeah.
firstly. Secondly, we let foreign powers put a lot of money to support integristic and very conservative and traditional ways of Islam here in Europe. And that is like, it is not possible. We can't let them do that. We can let imams that are coming from very conservative places from Turkey come here.
Yeah.
Because it's like Christianity, is when you have like the pastor, the imam that is very conservative, the people that will listen to him will also become more conservative. That is like, it's automatic. And for example, in Strasbourg, you have the big mosque of Strasbourg, and I met the imam there, and he's very open.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks that a religion has to be like something private, or that you share with your religious community, and it doesn't mean that it has to be superior to the laws of like the republic and so on and so on. What I wanted to, I had a professor here in the university that is a specialist from the Islamist movements.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to us, what we do today a lot is to say, all Islam is the same. And that is not true. You have conservative, you have traditional, you have liberal, you have moderate, you have a lot of forms of Islam. And I don't even begin on all on the movements in Islam itself, Sunni, Shiite, and so on, Salafist, and so on. But we just have an idea from Islam that we put on it since like 2001, since the Al-Qaeda and the attacks on the Twin Towers. We put an idea on it, and we are afraid from people that are Muslims. Today we have to learn on a way to integrate them in our society, and that they get part of this cultural European Christianity. Part from individualism, part from the rights of the person, and so on and so on. And it's happening. I mean, I have a person that I know at the university that are Muslim, that are going to the mosque, that are Protestant, but they acknowledge the fact that we need human rights, that women are equal to men, and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I think, really, that's why also cultural is so important. You can become integrated culturally. That don't mean assimilated. It means integrated.
Yeah.
And also have your own religion. That's, I think, very important. And for that, we don't have to send them in like clustered bases. And that's also why I think today, when we talk about the violent immigrants, it is less about real immigration from people that are coming here to seek a better life than from people that came here to seek a better life 3 generations ago, but that are stuck in a place where they don't feel welcome in their country. They don't like, for example, France. They don't feel French. They don't feel welcome in France. And they don't feel welcome in their origin countries.
Yeah.
Because they are second, third generations. So they are poor. They don't know where they are. So they look for an identity. And when you look for an identity, you will be drawn to the strongest that is in the place. And because we give authorization to foreign powers and to conservative powers to fund mosque and ways that are very conservative, they will come in these circles.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, the problem today are people that don't feel integrated, that aren't integrated. That is, I think, the main problem from Islam today in Europe.
I agree. I don't know the specifics of the situation in France, but when I look at Germany, for example, we have also the issue of the third generation immigrants, especially like often a lot of like, for example, organized crime is done by like Lebanese clan families that are, for example, in Berlin or Frankfurt, who are often descendants of people who like fled in the 80s from the Lebanese civil war. They settled in Germany, but they only got like temporary permits to stay there because everyone thought the civil war would be over very quickly. But I think it lasted over a decade at the end. It was several years. So they didn't got sent back, but they also weren't like integrated, weren't allowed to work. And they formed their own parallel societies in a lot of German cities. They're like basically living among themselves and weren't allowed to work, weren't integrated, and created their own ecosystem that were like radicalizing and not really being allowed to be a part of society. And that's a source of a lot of the crime, because I think we also Europe is still like learning how to do immigration, because I think unless the United States, we didn't have that much immigration prior to the 1950s, 1960s.
Yeah. We had immigration from the old colonies, of course, but that was still small.
Very small.
But I think also one of the big problems is that we take small examples and we extrapolate them to all the population. So, for example, when you have a third generation immigrant that stabs someone because of criminality, because of poverty, I don't know, because he has mental problems, we will think like, because we saw on television, on medias and so on, that there are more than, and that the majority of immigrants are like this guy. And that's why, for example, I come from a very rural area in France. Like in my village, we were like 600 or something like that. And we had immigrant there. We had families of Pakistanis people, of Muslim people. And when I talked with people that I knew very well, they're voting for far right, about them, they're saying, "Oh yeah, but they are so well integrated. They are very good immigrants." So that means that good immigrants are an exceptions to the rule. But if you look to like the big majority of immigrants, and even the research that is doing the very serious research by social scientists, it is a minority that is problematic.
Yeah.
And the majority, if you come to a country and you want to integrate, to find a job and so on, if you find a job, you want the best for your children. So you will send your children to the school. Your children will learn French, will learn the local culture. They will learn and so on. They will have friends from the same place. You
Yeah.
want to integrate. If you want to stay long term, you will want to integrate. It's just logical.
Yeah.
But people don't see that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, most humans, no matter where they come from, are just normal humans
Yeah,
who just want to get along and live a good life, right?
precisely. Yeah.
And I think a lot of the issues is also actually just perception. I mean, for example, a lot of far right populist discourses about how unsafe Europe has become because of mass migration. They cite all the violence, but I mean, we have rising violent crime in some cities, especially big cities like Paris or Marseille or Berlin. But if you look overall on Europe, we have actually a decline in violent crime over the last 3 decades, and we also have like 1/6 of the like homicide and violent crime rate of the United States. Europe is one of the safest places on the world, but if you like scroll through social media, you just get shown like way more violent crime than you were shown 20 years ago on the news because you're getting exposed to it all the time. And somehow people think that like we are descending into to violence
Mm.
while actually it's pretty normal. Like I had also like friends recently from Romania visiting me in Germany, and they thought like from social media that Germany, like big cities in Germany, must be really violent and bad and everyone gets raped and stabbed. And we were sitting in Stuttgart in some park. Next to us were some African migrants playing some ball games, and the Romanian dudes were like, actually everyone is here pretty chill. It's not bad as on X, right?
Uh, but it's the same here in Brussels. In Brussels, everybody's saying, "Oh, yeah, it's a very dangerous city." I mean, in Libya, I didn't lived everything something violent in like the most violent thing I had was a manifestation where the police, a demonstration where the police like attacked us. That's the only thing very violent I lived here. But yeah, and it's really about perception, and like you said, the facts don't correlate. And when there's like facts that work, it doesn't mean always immigrations. I mean the fact that in France there's a rise of like mafia groups
Mm,
is linked to the fact that we created some things like ghetto, that's a lot of poverty, and it's very easy for criminality to install themselves there. Firstly, and secondly, that the French society consumes a lot of drugs. If you have a, I mean, it's you. Lot people forget that criminality is an economic way of living, and that if there's a market, they will come to this market,
yeah,
and we have just to find a way to fight against that. But fighting at the immigration itself, it's fighting against something. uh, I mean, immigration is a concept you can't fight against. Immigration is something that will happen. You have to see how you will manage this immigration.
yeah,
That's, I think, something very important to point out. Immigrations happened since beginning of mankind.
yeah.
I mean, Roman Empire, they had migration. The city states in Europe, they had migration. Colonization is a form of migration. I mean, that were Europeans that were living elsewhere, and so on and so on. So it is existing, but we have to see how we will manage it.
Mm,
If we want to do so, that they will be integrated. If we want that immigrants become like they forgot all their old culture and become like assimilated,
hmm.
that's a strategic. But you can't say I'm fighting against immigration. Yeah, it's like saying I'm fighting against the wind. It doesn't work. Is I will manage immigration on that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big problem Europe has is that we are very bad at, and also geographically just because we have the Middle East and Africa directly in front of our doors. We, unlike, for example, the United States or Canada, we can't like really filter kinds of migration we get as well. I mean, for example, it's very hard to migrate into the United States
Mm.
because I mean, they get a lot of Latin American migration, but beyond that, they're like isolated from a lot of the crisis zones of the world, so they don't get that much refugees, and they are way more selective for like which labor they let in. But they also like the Americans, for example, have evolved, I think, way more institutions to integrate and assimilate people into like Americans. While we in Europe, we don't have that. We have way often like more like ethnic conceptions of nationhood, and that makes it a little bit harder, I think, for also for people to integrate or assimilate if they want to.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, America didn't have a culture for a very long time. They created it on
Some would say they
migration.
still don't have it.
And some say
Um,
this still the time. But I mean, I can say that that America is still from European culture.
yeah,
That's something else. There's an American culture, I think, that exists, but that is basically multicultural.
yeah,
But yeah, of course, we have like ethnic bases here in Europe, and that's one of the problems. And also, we have to think um, about migrants also as an asset. We
yeah,
need migration. I mean, the best example of why we need migrations is when there are far right governments that are anti-migrants, that are in power. Because what are they doing? They are saying, "Oh yeah, we don't want Muslim migration. We don't want migration from Africa. But Chinese migration, no problem. You can come. Like Indonesian, no problem. Meloni that is accepting like 300,000 migrant workers, no problem. Yeah, because we need them. I mean, the in France, only in like the sector from restaurants, the eat sector, like
yeah,
they need 300,000 people. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of people that don't have work in France, but these people don't want to do these kinds of jobs. So, or they want to do it, but then you have to force them. Oh yeah, you need migration. So simple is it? So the question is more like, of course you have to filter it because there can be dangerous people amongst it, and open border policy is also not a very good idea. But you have to accept that it will happen. You will have migration. You need it, and the question is more how you will manage it.
yeah. I
Yeah.
agree very much. I mean, also not only for like gastronomy, but also like for high skilled labor. I think here Europe really, um, for example, I think it's also in the Draghi report, or it was in some report from the Atlantic Council. But for example, if you look at AI, Europe is really bad at AI, but also because like 60% of the world's top AI scientists go to the United States, even a lot of them are often from Europe. They have often studied in France or Germany at very good European universities, but then they go to the United States because it's way more attractive for them. And even like people from India or China also don't come to Europe because it's really sometimes very hard actually for to get here with a lot of paperwork. I know that for myself, I have family members from Japan, and even coming from Japan, which is a first world country, the paperwork, for example, to migrate into Germany is not that easy to get
Yeah.
and takes a lot of time. Um,
Mm.
so we have to, I think, become more attractive for this kind of migration as well, um, while also filtering. I agree.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Do you wanted to say something or?
Or I could really quickly add that we forget that we have the most highly educated youth in the world. Most of our youth is highly educated. And what happens is that they go to the United States to work.
Yeah.
And that's the big problem, and that's why we need the 28 states, that we need to make the rules easier. But sometimes you heard the right in some countries saying, yeah, to make the rules easier, we have to cut rules at the European level. It doesn't work like that. You have to cut rules at national level and add them at the European level, because
Yeah.
if not, you will still have the same problems.
Yeah. I mean, that's a crisis. I think that's very under discussed and underrated in political discourse. Actually, the immigration crisis Europe also have. We have like I think 1.5 to 2 million Europeans that leave every year Europe, often for the United States, but also like for Asia. Um, and most of the ones that leave are our like most educated and the young, like end of 20s, early 30s, most productive, often academics, researchers, scientists, and they leave from the United States.
Mm.
And Europe struggles to like basically keep its top people on its own continent.
Yeah, that's why we are thanking very much Donald Trump to send them back to us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's something we have to thank Donald Trump for. He's like scaring everyone back. Um, but I think we have to be a bit more ambitious than like just America getting less attractive. For so and why we stay the same, so we get the people back. I think we have to also like try to think about how we can, and economically also like
Mm.
make it easier and more appealing to come to Europe. And
Yeah, and also right now we have a window of opportunity in the political world. Most of the people in power, they are afraid from Donald Trump
yeah,
and from Russia, and they are mentioned from China. We have now window of opportunity where we can say we will rely on something.
yeah,
11%, only 11% from all the Europeans trust the US. So now until
yeah,
the end of the Trump administration, because I'm sure it will be a Democrat after that, we have to create an independence from the US. Because if I see our politicians today, most of them will be more than happy to jump back in the arms of America on the moment it will become Democrat again. But
yeah,
Americans aren't pro-European. They've never been pro-European. They've been pro-America, and Europe was their allies, and we have to see them as that allies.
yeah,
And allies change position sometime. And if we are too dependent, it's not possible. But I'm really afraid that most of European politicians are waiting for Donald Trump to go away, and that it goes back to the good old time.
yeah. I don't believe we will get that
Uh,
the good old times will ever return.
I don't believe it too, but I think some
Um,
people do.
yeah, but I share the impression that a lot of, especially of our like older political
Mm.
establishment, who are very transatlantic, especially here in Germany, but also if I look at Poland, they are so used to be basically America's lapdogs that they just basically can conceptualize a long-term independence from the United States.
Yeah.
They just look for ways back. But I think even a Democrat, I mean, if you look back, I mean, Biden was very supportive of Ukraine, but on the other hand, he also was waging a trade war with his Inflation Reduction Act against us, just with subsidies instead of tariffs. And Obama basically, when Crimea was invaded, didn't do anything. Um,
Mm.
Even under Democrats, I think we have to like become more self-reliant
Yeah,
and
of course.
independent.
And just America is fighting for America. The only
Yeah,
thing that's different is that Democrats are easier to talk to than Trump people. That's the only difference. But I'm convinced if now Europe is attacked, America won't come help. They won't do that. And that's why, for example, NATO. I believe we still have to be transatlantic at some parts. They are still allies,
yeah,
and they are still democratic power. We still have to work with them. Now, it depends on the administration, of course. But for example, NATO has to be reformed. It has to become an alliance between the United States and Europe, not the United States. That is like the master of the NATO and the European countries that are under just an alliance between two big powers.
yes.
And of course, Canada and Australia and so on and so on. But it has to become mainly an alliance between two powers without someone like being the big boss that decides all.
Yeah. I mean, if Europe becomes its own independent superpower and allies itself with the United States, I mean, the united Western world is something that like is an unrivaled bloc in regards to power and economic might. I mean, that's also why the Russians, I think, and Chinese are very happy about Trump
Yeah.
destroying this alliance, or at least for now, removing Europe more and more from the sphere of influence of the United States.
Mm.
But for us as Europeans, this is a wake up call and also opportunity to become independent and more sovereign.
Mm.
Um, but so there's a window of opportunity, but it's like closing also, depending on how things go.
Yeah.
Because even if Orban is now gone, and that's just one of the big roadblocks, returning to what we talked more at the beginning, in France next year, we might see like another roadblock coming, a French.
And that would be a far bigger block than Orban. You can't say we will stop sending money to Orban. It's a bit more difficult to say that to France. And what I mean also about the window of opportunity and the Chinese and the Russians is I think they underestimate us. I think really that if Europe wakes up, that the people of Europe decide really it's now time to become an independent superpower, we will be stronger than the US, we will be stronger than China, we will be stronger than Russia. We will be the major power in the world. For Russia,
Yeah.
that's very easy. Like, I mean, Russia
Uh,
is it has big clothes, but they don't have a lot more.
yes.
But I think Europe is the place in the world that has the most potential and can become the strongest power in the world. But for that, we have to wake up, and that is, I think, very complicated. And more than that, we have to wake up in the next 2 years, and that I think.
Well, I'm actually very optimistic. For one, because I also agree, Europe has the potential if we really unite and would get over all this fragmentation. We would be the most powerful bloc on earth and the most powerful geopolitical player, and also a beacon of liberty and democracy and human rights. And I think this awakening and realization that we have this potential and we are wasting our potential right now, um, it's starting. I mean, as you said, I mean, in the surveys, we see people are more and more pro-European. Even like the populists are like toning down the anti-EU positioning often. I mean, it
Hmm.
waxes and wanes, but even Badea has his moments where he says we have to work more on more European level. I remember he gave this one speech that was very. It sounded very pro-European in Strasbourg around the time when there was the Mercosur
Hmm.
vote. So people are slowly waking up, but I don't know if it ripples fast enough through the institutions and the parties and the elections.
That's a bit what I'm afraid of. I'm agreeing with you, and I also have a lot of hope. I'm always a great believer in the people themselves. But yeah, will it be quick enough?
Mhm.
Will we have the emergence of figures, of public figures that can represent such a movement? I think out
Mhm.
there's always at this formula, like we need new mothers and fathers of Europe.
Yeah.
We need them, and that's, I think, something we need really quickly. We will have them, and because we need them to change the political parties, because like the mainstream old political parties, like we said before, most of them, on the moment the US will come back with Democrats, they will run back to their arms, and they are still blocked in a more nationalistic ways.
Yeah.
So, and we are fighting. We are now right now in a war, truly in a war against the nationalists that are helped by the international authoritarians.
Yeah.
Russia is already waging a war against Europe, and that is just one thing to to know. That is to listen what they are saying in their televisions. This is very
Yeah.
easy. They are saying it. They are saying Europe is our adversary.
we say it very open. There's of this great YouTube channel, Russian Media Monitor, that publishes clips from Russian TV with like English subtitles. I can highly recommend watching that for the listeners that don't know it. But Russian state TV and Russian propaganda, and also like the press conferences the Kremlin does, they are very open about how much they hate us and how much they see the war in Ukraine as a war against Europe, right? Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, basically all these nationalist movements, RN, AFD, they are like proxies working for this whole autocracy Inc., right?
Yeah.
Russia, the Trumpists.
They are simply traitors to their own people. I
That,
mean, the people that are voting for them hope to have a better life. But the first thing they will do is to sell their countries or to Russia or to the US or to China or to the free with
yeah, like Orban did basically.
with Orban did, and also what we forgot a lot because these people they use a lot of the terms. Yeah, the elites are against us, but we see more and more very rich people, very rich people that are helping the nationalistic movement. I call them the nationalistic elites. And for example, in France, we have a guy that is named Bolloré, Vincent Bolloré, and he's one of the richest men in France. And he has a lot of medias, and his medias are serving the far right.
Yeah.
With him is another guy. His name is Terrain. He has also a lot of businesses, and he has created a project that is named Pericles. And I don't know what precisely the Pericles means, because the P means something and so forth and so forth. But his project, and he says openly, is cultural war and a nationalistic cultural war. So we have now more and more an alliance between very rich elites and the nationalistic forces. Why? Because they know very well that these people will be more than happy to sell the countries and to lower all the rights for the workers on the moment they are in power.
Yeah. I mean, that's a global phenomenon. I mean, Anna Applebaum wrote this book, Autocracy Inc., exactly about this, like growing global oligarchic structure of like authoritarian states, very rich people, and far-right populist parties working together, often also across very different ideological lines, like the Iranians and North Koreans and Russians working together. And I mean, right now we also see like Elon Musk, who's the richest person in the world, the first trillionaire. He is openly basically cheering on for far-right populist parties in Europe on his own X account.
Yeah.
And I mean, he is the establishment. Even if he also uses this rhetoric of being not part of the establishment, he is.
If you're the first trillionaire, you can say you are into the establishment.
Yeah, you're the richest person in the world. You're on the top of the food chain.
Yeah,
And
please. Yeah.
yeah, so that's Europe is currently really under attack. We are getting like attacked from all sides.
Yeah, that's it. And I think we now have to create a common front.
Yeah.
All the militant pro-European movement have firstly to coordinate actions, because we have each movement has its strong points. And I mean, maybe they are not agreeing on everything, but I mean, in the Second World War, the UK wasn't agreeing in everything with the US, and France was, and the Gaulle wasn't agreeing a lot with the UK. So we have to put the major differences apart.
Yeah.
To put a fight, to begin fighting, I mean, because right now we are fighting, but it's very scattered. We have difficulties to create a front. And also when we are coordinated, when we create a front, we will also find money. We will also find capacity to fight back. And we will have the emergence of figures, of leaders that can lead this fight. And that I am convinced of that. And that's also why I think in the next years we need to have an assembly, a European assembly from all the pro-European actors in all Europe, small and big, that has to be organized somewhere to have a show of force. If we can assemble 10,000 pro-Europeans in one place for like a week, I think we can start something very beautiful, because the medias, they look at such things. So yeah, we have like to need such points to start really much a coordinated fight and to fight back, because now we are defending, we need to fight back.
Yeah, I agree very much. Uh, I mean, there are a lot of movements right now popping up that try to do this. We have like Via Europe, we have First Domino, we have like my own projects like Astra, who also want to like, but do really like we have to work across the political spectrum at the end of the day and across country borders. And I mean, that's the largest challenge, that we're like still fragmented politically and linguistically in a lot of places.
That's why I think the European movement and Pan-Europe are like two big actors. If they succeed to propose this and to organize this, I think they are still important enough to convince all these movements to come together.
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, the European movement is more center-left. Paneuropa is more center-right. They are the two oldest movements that are existing, and they have the capacity of the people and the money to organize something like that. So I think that the responsibility on these two movements is enormous. And if we succeed to do something like that, like an assembly in the next years, I think it will be tremendous.
And let's do it. Have you already like pitched that, or is there something already in the working from the leaderships of the two movements? Are you aware of something?
That's always a problem. I do a lot, but I am not big enough to do something like that right now. And also Paneuropa has problems of its own that we have to solve right now before we can do something like that. But my hope is that I can meet enough people to try to pitch something like that in the 2 next years. But yeah, I think it could be needed.
A great like pro-European General Assembly.
Yeah, and when we in an assembly where you have all the pro-European movements, but also all the pro-European national parties, for example, and not only parties, just like if you have an MEP that is very pro-European, invite him. I think what's his name again? In Lucas Sieper, I think, from the European Parliament.
Yeah,
he has a small party, but he's very much pro-European. We need such people coming by. We need, even if they are only on the national like level, if they are pro-European, we need them. So it has to be as broad as possible if we want to succeed to do something, but it has to be very well organized, that it isn't just like a rock in the water and everybody will disband after.
Yeah, and
so
just sit together and agree with each other, but actually get something done.
Yeah,
and push towards.
Find the common ground, and become like the biggest action group that has ever existed in Europe. And I think, and in basis, that was the role of the European movement. But I feel like that European movement is really struggling right now to succeed in that.
Yeah, I mean, basically what we need is what the Americans had like in 74, the first Continental Congress, where like basically all the important leaders from the different American colonies came together and started like working on a independence declaration and constitution.
Yeah.
We need something like similar for our continent.
That, and really with people that are citizens, people that are representing citizens, people that are from the industry, from all the levels, that we can be representative, and that our message will be spread as far as possible. We have really much to, I think it is like the first way to fight back, to have like a really to to punch the far right and nationalistic in the face, and to show that we exist, that we, the silent majority, because that's the case, exist, and we are right now beginning to fight back. That's really, because I see a lot of, like in the last months, I had a lot of meetings. I met you, for example. I didn't know you before. I met people from other European movements. I met other pan-Europeans and so on and so on. And I see a lot of very local but very important projects that could have, with the help of a far bigger movement, a far bigger outreach, and create, for example, uncommon social arena in Europe to have discussions further than just the nationalistic way.
Yeah. I mean, that's I think is a very important thing, that we have also a discourse and this discussion on a pan-European level, because that's something that Europe still lacks, that our like media and our cultural discourses often are very fragmented. And for example, average European knows probably more about the politics of New York than the politics of his European neighbors, just because everyone consumes American media, but I don't know what's going on in Slovakia or Hungary as well as I know about America, for example, despite them being closer to me and maybe more relevant. So we have to build that. I mean, one of the goals of the podcast we are right in is to help building this network among European activists, give them some platform, connect and amplify that. But we'll need way more of that.
Yeah, that's very good, and it's also very much on the American model, where the podcast became very important places of communication.
Yeah,
on good ways and bad ways, sadly. But
yeah, I mean, yeah.
So I think it's a very good idea that you had.
I mean, I'm not the first one. I think there have been some attempts. I think the only one that like somewhat exists right now is Forum Europeum from Daniel in Budapest. But I was actually surprised that he's basically the only one who does like this niche of doing interviews with pro-European people across the continent, and that no one really did that before. And I thought, okay, we need way more projects like that. So I started it now my own. But yeah, beyond that, we have also only like EU Made Simple as a like pan-European medium, and maybe Euroactive.
Yeah, there are some things that exist, of course, but
Yeah,
most of them are like too small to go against the more nationalistic ones.
yeah,
So that's always a problem. And I myself, I tried a bit. I have with a friend a little associative radio in the south of France. We have a little emissions about Europe in France. In French. So yeah, it exists, but I think indeed we have to expand. But the only way to expand is to organize.
yeah.
It is what the socialists did with the international communists, for example. Oh, there was a lot of little movement, little ideas, and they united, and it became a very important force.
Yeah, the Communist International.
Yeah.
The Comintern. We need basically a
Euro term.
Euro. Eurotern.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
use that name because you will give a lot of a lot of energy to the far right that are saying that Europe is like the USSR, but the idea is there.
Do that. I mean, they will find something.
Oh,
Though, Turning Point Europe, I also know one guy, Arthur, I also interviewed him, who's also now trying to build a kind of Turning Point Europe interview, podcast, media program. So there are more things coming now of this kind, and that also, like as you said at the beginning, try to copy the populist tactics, but for Europe.
Yeah. When I mean copying the populist tactics, is really that. It is having the media finding ways to attract a lot of people, to have simple ideas coming by. And then, of course, in a second part, you can have like more detailed and so on and so on. But if you don't, it's like very basic communication. If you don't have a hook, the people won't look at it.
Yeah,
It's as simple as that.
that's true.
Mm.
You have to get that tension out.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah,
We are doing that right now, and I
yeah.
think that was a That was so far a great discussion. I think we will start to wrap it up a bit. Do you have any advice for our listeners or viewers if they want to get active for Europe, especially if they're like in Belgium, in Paneuropa? How do we can approach you?
Well, mainly, you can contact me on Instagram. I'm very accessible on that part. You just send me a message and on my public account of the Paneuropa Belgium account. So if you want to work for Belgium, we are recruiting. We are trying to create something here, and Paneuropa is also recruiting. So that's first part. Second part, it is always good to talk about Europe around you. And if you are, for example, at the university, try to create a federalist association. In most universities, it is not complicated to create an association. If you have like 2 or 3 friends, you can do that. But like I said, if you are part of a movement, you can already try to pitch a little bit this idea of working with other movements, to contact other movements, to contact other people, and to see, for example, I don't know, if you need informations about one specific area, but you don't have a researcher in it, you can contact another movement that has done that research. There's a lot of things that are already out there, and we just need to find them. So that is really easy. But of course, I will preach for my own choir. If you want to be involved in Paneuropa, just send me a message.
I mean, I'm also a member of Paneuropa Union, but like here in Bavaria, it's a bit more conservative on the side.
Yeah, yeah. In Belgium, we have really a strategy to, if you are pro-European, pro-democracy, we can work with you, and it is free to join here in Belgium right now. So and we are trying to expand. For example, our media page is now by 2,000 and something followers. So we're trying also to expand that. So we can use a lot of help, of course, but the basic help is just to follow the page and to like the posts.
Great. I will do that. And I'm already
Thank you
doing
very
that.
much.
So, Nathan, it was a great pleasure talking to you. Thanks for joining today, and it was a very interesting discussion. And yeah, call to action for everyone who's listening. If you're in Belgium, especially all the Benelux states, reach out to him and connect.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you
precisely.
very much.
Thank you very much to you. Have a great evening.